You gonna come in with a Golden Knight jersey tomorrow?
No, I'm still wearing my Pittsburgh Flurry jerseys.
Okay, and not that we have to like give reactions to Holden right now at this point, but based on things, based on things that would be happening in 17 to 26, and remember where you picked up would be date with Sally, so ice skating, going to see the lights and all that kind of stuff. So that's the point we're looking at. Anything strike you about any people that he meets? Anything strike you about conversations that he has? Any questions, or now things that maybe make sense about part one that didn't make sense before, and now kind of make sense with part two? So it doesn't have to be Holden.
Well, I kind of like see, mine was about Holden. I kind of like see why people say he has like a mental disorder or something. Like that whole date with Sally where he got the idea out of nowhere to go move to like a cabin in the north, and then he like freaked out on her when she said yes, and freaked out when she said no, and.
So his mental concerns are like more apparent.
Yes.
Okay. And so you have the whole date with Sally. It could be the yelling that kind of takes place. How dare you not want to move up to New England with me and live in a cabin in the woods, all that kind of stuff. Kind of talks about wanting to run away. Grace, I didn't hear what you said.
Isn't that what Sally is?
In a way, yeah. Doesn't like run away completely, but he certainly separates himself. Now, the ironic thing would be he does do that, but it's after this takes place. Because most of this he's writing in World War II, and then the book gets published in 51, and it's kind of afterwards where he buys his home up in Cornish, where he does kind of have this compound. But it's certainly a Salinger thing, to kind of do it at this point. I mentioned to you when we were first introducing the book that the first story that he was going to get published in the New Yorker was, I'm forgetting the title, I'm having a mind blank, something off Madison. I don't remember the name of it. But it's basically chapter 17. It's like The Date with Sally was the original short story that then the book gets built around. Now it's different. The short story is a third-person point of view, so it's not Holden's total stream of consciousness, but it still sounds like Holden still kind of acts the same way towards Sally. But that event, that episode, comes like the base madness off Slight Rebellion. Thank you, off Madison. But that idea is still pretty prevalent throughout the book. Sean, what were you gonna?
Is this the guy that you said went off and doesn't talk to anybody, or was that the guy from?
No, it's Salinger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Cool. They're all jumbled up now.
I can't say that. Like, does he eat at all?
Yeah.
For these 3 days, I feel like he gets like one sandwich and he tries to eat it down.
Not as much as he wanted to.
Well, he drank for like a solid 4 hours when he went out with the news.
No, I mean his.
Are we going advanced years now?
It certainly would be understatement to go, he's not living a healthy lifestyle in any ways. Now, it's a short episode, certainly in a longer life. So is this what he does every single day? Now. But yeah, throughout the course of the book, he's not doing a whole lot. When it comes to sustaining himself, he's hardly getting any sleep. Would be the other thing. So you have hardly any food. You got booze running through your system. You're running on lack of sleep. You're paranoid about anything and everything. The whole Mr. Angelini situation gets to be a little bit weird. None of it is going well. And besides talking about mental instability or depression that would be taking place with the loss of Allie, I mean, your point's valid. Where if you don't eat and you don't sleep, you can't.
You're gonna go crazy.
Think correctly. And so, that's certainly going to expedite the whole situation. Not that we have to jump into the Angelini scenario that happens, but, I kind of of take a look at it where, you know, Anthony sees him and, you know, kind of feels bad for him and pats him on the head, and then he wakes up and, you know, all hell basically breaks loose from his mind point, from his viewpoint. And even when he gets back to Central Station, it's going, yeah, I might have exaggerated what happened. It might not have been like that. So there's kind of like a little moment of clarity that kind of takes place, and then, you know.
So it was like some hallucination.
I don't think it was hallucination, and not that I'm going to pat Lindsay on the head. I do think that that Antolini, you know, does pat him on the head and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that Antolini is making any kind of pass out of the way that Holden seems to be. You could argue that he's homophobic based on things that he does kind of say throughout the course of the book. The comment that is weird is when he goes, you know, and that's not like the first time that's kind of like happened to me, and you have no idea what he means by that. And again, you know, what kind of exaggerations take place in his mind, a whole bunch of them. So I don't think he hallucinated the scene by any means, but I do think he probably took something that wasn't meant to be like a perpetrator and use that kind of. What do you mean? Phoebe tends to be, and I'm making a general statement here, Phoebe tends to be a lot of folks' favorite character in the whole entire book. There's a list that we'll probably look at later on in the year. It's the top 100 fictional characters from like 1900 to 2000, so it's not like all throughout time. So like Holden Caulfield's high on the list and things like that. Phoebe's fairly high on the list. I think she's like number 54 or something like that, which is pretty impressive considering she's not really in the book for a large amount of time. Kurtz is on the list, and of course you're going to get upset about that. But
who's number one?
What? Say that later.
Are we gonna read the book that number one is on?
It's definitely criminal.
Tom Jones.
Tom Jones should be higher. I don't think he was on the list actually.
I'm not surprised.
What? 1900s, 20th century.
Italy. Number one is just Lucy.
What do we like about Phoebe? Or what do we notice about Phoebe? Let's kind of put it that way. Like,
She's probably the only sane person in the
Davis
book.
is number one. Connie. Connie is number one on the list. Sharon taken number two.
a lot of folks look at her as being clear-minded, rational. Her thoughts make sense. I do think that kind of gets emphasized a little bit by the lack of rational thought that Holden has. So, you know, you have someone who clearly is not in the right set of mind, and then you have Phoebe show up. Oh, she seems so wonderful. And again, this isn't a knock against Phoebe. I think a lot of 10-year-old kids are going to seem more clear-minded and headed and whatnot compared to Holden, you know, at this point within the book.
I think that kind of hits on it. But like, she hasn't seen her brother in a while. But like, she knows what's up with him, and she knows like what he's been through. Yeah. It keeps going to be 100 of it.
She seems to get him better than anybody else. And again, I think you would kind of hope that's the case with a sibling, you know, possibly. Certainly the fact that she is 10 years old, in Holden's mind seems to probably be a good thing because she's not an adult. You know, she's the anti-adult that would be taking place at this point.
She seems way older than 10 and how she talks and interacts with people.
I like her notebook, where all the names and stuff, you know, how she's trying to think, how do I want to be called and all that kind of stuff. Because that does seem like a 10-year-old kind of thing to do, and I agree, that she does sound a lot more mature, more rational, although, you know, Daddy's going to kill you, and she puts a pillow over her head and that kind of stuff. So she still has those 10-year-old moments, those 10-year-old vibes that go about her. but yeah, she seems to kind of get a bigger picture, bigger understanding, and she's not afraid to call Holden out when he says something stupid, does something wrong, makes her mad. You know, and hey, case in point, what's going on with the poem? He messes it up. Like, that's not the way that it goes. What's his line? He wants to be, we of course know, the catcher in the rye. You know the poem, you know the song. And how does he quote it? Catch a body coming through the rye. And she goes, that's not the way that it goes. It's coming through the rye, poor body, meet a body. It's not catch a body coming through the rye.
What 10-year-old kid can quote a poem by Robert Burns?
Well, Robert Burns is the Scottish, like, folk hero. Poetic legend of mice and men gets the title from Robert Burns' poem. Wrestling schemes of mice and men often go awry or gone off the glade would be the Scottish. Yeah, I don't know. Now keep in mind, what's the record that he buys for her? Little Shirley Beans is the record. It's kind of weird. Do you remember how he describes the voice on the record? He did, but he knows the record. He's familiar with it before. It's a Southern singer. It's a little girl, Southern singer. He describes the voice, and this is very Holden, Dixie Horish sounding, where a lot of folks go, why in the world would you buy a record that, you know, has that kind of sound to it for your 10-year-old sister? Of course we go, well, it's kind of Holden. He kind of does the same thing with the poem. What do you want to be? Oh, I want to be the catcher in the rye, you know, catch a body. You take a look at the poem, it is not an innocent poem by any means. It's a very sexual poem that's taking place. Basically, Jenny's going out into the field, and Jenny's meeting somebody out there and is going to be coming back later, and which makes it probably viral all the more, like, why would this 10-year-old girl know the poem? But she certainly seems to be mature, cerebral, know things, but he takes a very, and this is a Holden thing to do, a very mature kind of text, and what does he turn it into? I need to save the kids. I need to preserve their innocence. Why does he want to catch a body? Because he doesn't want them to fall, and by falling, what's going to happen? Get older, grow up, things like that. You think about the conversation he has with Mr. Antolini. Antolini gives him a warning where I think you're in for a great big fall. And Jake, what else?
Well, I was gonna say the conversation with Carl Luce also kind of goes into that, where he's like, "Holden, when are you gonna grow up?"
Right.
And then Holden just kind of just wants to fit in and have a conversation.
And it's like Holden can't find that happy medium between either being a kid or being almost like perverted kind of mature thing. And this sounds really weird, but it is like actual complex. Some folks think that he actually has, it's called a Madonna/whore complex, or it's viewpoint of women, where either you are on the pedestal of like the Madonna so far as religious context, or you get completely degraded by him. And so Phoebe's up on this pedestal, Jane's up on this pedestal, Sally kind of goes back and forth, you know, between the two. But then you have Sonny is someone who he, you know, reaches out to. You remember when he gets to New York City, the first person he calls, Faith Cavendish.
Oh yeah.
You know, like an escort. Basically, you get prostitute, you know, kind of thing again. Where it's, you know, he is almost a hypocrisy of himself, where you want to preserve the innocence, but then at the same time, he's trying to act so much like an adult, probably before he is ready to. But, you know, Antolini talks about him being in store for a great big fall, and then right after he has that conversation, after he's leaving Central Station, when he's going from one block to the next, you remember, he's not sure if he's going to make it, and who does he start calling out to?
Allie.
Allie, and he's afraid that he is disappear. Not Allie, but that Holden is going to kind of disappear, or it's kind of like this falling is taking place. So that whole fall that, you know, Phoebe doesn't warn of the fall necessarily right away, but you have this whole falling, you know, kind of leading you into adulthood, complex moment issue that he is struggling with. And Phoebe basically is someone who does tell him, you need to grow up. What do you like? Oh, I like.
I don't know.
Someone said it. I like Allie. And what's her response to it?
He's dead.
He's dead, which sounds callous in a way, but at the same time, it's her going, well, you need something like real that you can do. Oh, I want to be the catcher. You can't even get that right where you can't get the poem. So she certainly does kind of call him out quite a bit with it. But at the same time, when can you tell that she really understands him or gets a grasp of him? You know, towards the end, when they're back in Central Park, you have the carousel scene where she does come ready to what? Leave with him, and thank goodness Holden doesn't make a rash decision at that point, no, to stay behind. But she does what? Doesn't give him like a great big bear hug, but what's kind of like the I accept who you are kind of moment that kids have?
Doesn't she give that?
Puts the hat back on him, you know, so this is kind of who you are, and that's okay. One thing that does happen with that scene where she's on the carousel that I don't think is necessarily going to resonate with readers today. Remember why he's worried about her on the carousel when it's spinning around? She's going to fall off, and you remember reaching for what?
They're reaching for a
Golden ring. Anyone know golden rings on the carousels?
Oh yeah. Isn't that the
Like that little
No, sort of.
It's like on the outside, and then people go past it, and then try to freaking grab it.
Yeah. So the one on Kennywood doesn't have them anymore. I think it probably used to. Which part of the carousel do you want to be on? Because the horse does what? They're the ones that go up and down, and then the parents sit on like a nice little bench where we don't have to do anything here for a little bit. They used to have rings on them where, and as Ashley was saying, as you would go by, you would try to grab the ring. It was like the 18th hole when you go mini golfing. If you get the ball in the clown nose or whatever, you get a free game. If you could pull the ring, the bell would go off, and you would get a free ride. Why do they go away? Well, there's Allie trying to, you know, falling off, and you have too many kids who are kind of getting hurt and folks suing all the time. But he makes the comment that sometimes you have to let them fall. And if you have this idea about, well, falling into adulthood and all of that kind of stuff, maybe you get the sense that, hey, at some point you might actually have to grow up, mature, not necessarily change completely, but be able to move on into different things. So I think Phoebe certainly plays a big part in Holden's transition from someone who cannot see and make sense of anything to someone who maybe has a better understanding, grasp of what's going to happen. And after meeting Phoebe, at the end with the carousel, we do know is when he's, you know, kind of goes into recovery a little bit. No, we don't know what the moment is that allows for that to happen. That gets omitted from the book. I think some people get frustrated with that. But you at least know that, hey, things kind of start to trend up for him at that point. What else?
Why don't authors ever make like a second book? Like some do, but like why? Why can't like somebody?
Some people, it's rumor, there's speculation that there is another one. I mean, because he, number one, Salinger would write multiple texts about characters. He did this a lot with his short stories. There's the Glass family that he just wrote about over and over and over again. He's deceased. He's been dead for a little while now, but supposedly he has volumes and volumes and volumes, and one of the things that is said to be published at some point in the near future is the continuation of Catcher in the Rye.
I almost don't want to read anymore.
Yeah, whether or not that happens, or who knows if it will. There is an unauthorized, and I have never read it. There is an unauthorized sequel I forget the name of it, what it's called, but Holden escapes his retirement home. He's like 80 years old and he gets out. It's not written by Salinger, it's written by, I forget the pseudonym that the character, that the author uses for it, or whatnot, but
It sounds like a spook.
because it's probably stupid.
I need some closure. If anything, I'd rather read like the prequel experience, like Allie and
There are DB is a focal point of some of his short stories, and I've never read one. I don't know of one where Allie kind of becomes a focal point of it. But I know DB does have like a bigger part in a lot, and so Holden will show up. I would assume Allie shows up in some of them. I don't know if there is anything that is published that has more with Allie. And I guess in some ways, I think one of the, whether you like Holden or not, one of the charms of him, I think, is the way that he perceives Allie. And that could be one of those things where, you read a story, if Allie were to like say something bad or do something wrong, you kind of wonder, oh, he's not as great as I thought he was. But yeah, it would be interesting to see more with him.
So how does he end up going to the psych ward?
We don't know.
Yeah.
Because doesn't he end up out west, like he said he was going to go anyways? So does he like go after the?
He was right. Except he's not living with the deaf mute girl, the way that he kind of said he would. You don't really know where he is. You don't know 100% what's wrong with him. There are arguments that he's just sick, or he has like TB or tuberculosis or pneumonia. And I mean, he's not eating. He's sitting outside, freezing cold. But it's not like just 1 week later, because he's talking about these months later. Whether it's a mental facility, whether it's just a sanatorium, which would probably be the more upper middle class kind of facility that he would get sent to kind of recuperate, we don't know for sure. I kind of make the assumption mom and dad finally figure out something's wrong and we need to do something for him. Although, he's still kind of skittish about saying stuff like he does in chapter 1, they would be really mad and sore if I were to tell you all of the stuff that were to take place. But, I mean, honestly, I really don't know.
Trying to clarify some details in the book, I ended up looking some stuff up, and I think I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that he was like in the hospital for TB, but he just happened to be seeing a psychiatrist too while he was there.
It's never clarified completely. And one of Grace was making the point, and then Sean also making the point about Salinger. Salinger, before he comes back to the United States, before he gets married to the German officer, he does spend some time after all the concentration camps and all the stuff that he's gone through. He does spend some time in mental hospital, like a VA hospital, and probably more so with like what we would diagnose as PTSD at this point than anything else. I would expect that there's probably some actual physical illness with Holden. I would expect to the point that he's probably just so run down that whether he has TB or something else, that physically he is kind of ill at this point. And yeah, there would be kind of like a combination of the two. There's not like that part where it goes, and I got tuberculosis, and therefore I live in Colorado Springs or something like that. It all stays pretty vague. But tomorrow we'll kind of work on soapstone a little bit with the book, like with the whole idea of where is Salinger coming from? Is he endorsing Holden? Is he saying, hey, stay away from someone like this kid? But certainly as you look into Holden, there are a lot more parallels that take place with Salinger. The whole idea about, isolating yourself, the Peter Pan forever young kind of complex, the myriad of physical and, mental, not illnesses taking place, but instabilities, concerns, and things like that. But yeah, he's definitely kind of somewhere. And even if it's not a total mental breakdown, like one of the books that we're going to read in the near future is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where, you are in a total mental white jacket, straight jacket kind of mental facility. He certainly would not be in any kind of place like that. I do think the sanatorium probably makes sense, because it's kind of that cure for all ills, kind of thing that would be there.
In Salinger's other books, like where he uses the other characters, are they like the same type, just the name, or are they like the same type of characters all the time?
Like when he would use Holden or DB before. No, they would be the same.
So like it would be Holden like still acting this way, so it doesn't really give us any insight into.
There's not. I don't know of any other text that you would that would play off of this one. There's more text when DB is younger, and DB is still a writer, and DB does want to kind of have a career and things like that. I don't think for all the stories he has like all of the big picture kind of things in mind with it, and they're not all written in this perspective. Most of Salinger's stuff is like regular third-person narrator. So what makes this one so different is you're getting every single thought of Holden taking place. With that third-person narrator, you don't quite pick up as much on the little secrets and ideas that would be floating through Holden's head. So there's not those big-time clues that would necessarily break open the whole case with him. But he's pretty consistent with his characters. It's not just using, hey, I like the name Holden, I like the name BB. Let's make all my characters about them. They're pretty consistent with it. I mean, and I might have said this to your class or might have been another one like. I think you can make the argument that Salinger looks at his characters as being his family, and he is very defensive about Holden. When like he's upset that people aren't allowed or not supposed to read his book, in 52, 53, 54, especially like younger kids and things like that. That's who should be reading the book in his mind. It's something that he creates. It's kind of his world. He's very passionate about it. They're his kids, in a way. His daughter, Salinger's daughter, does kind of like not a tell-all book, but kind of like this is what it was like growing up with J.D. Salinger. And paraphrasing, but one of her comments was, I was never one of his kids, as the Holdens, the DBs, and all the other characters are in his short story. So he's very protective about him. I think the documentary Salinger, which I have the poster over there, I think it might still be on Netflix. It's like a 2-hour documentary. It's pretty good. It's kind of getting what's the insight into Salinger. He's a different guy. Or was a different guy. It is interesting. I don't know if it's one that you necessarily sit down for 2 hours at that time.
They took off.
But, you gotta
Still 2 seasons left. I think I'm gonna watch more Family Guy. Either gonna rewatch that
for tomorrow, and I did kind of just reference this, we're going to certainly take a look at what would be that overall purpose. And not that we're going to be able to kind of come up with a direct answer for it, because, who's to say that we truly know. But do you see Salinger as being a person who's going, hey, look at Holden, this is how you should be, and this is kind of like complex of going into either or, that's not the case. But do you see it more as promoting a character like Holden, or do you see it more as, don't be this guy, because look, what can kind of go wrong? And it's not an easy answer, because I think there's certainly characteristics that would make you feel that, hey, he really does like Holden and endorses him, but at the same point, there's like some warning signs that would be coming up from the other side. So tomorrow when you come in, there's going to be 2 things. There'll be the TWA prompt, which we'll look at briefly, but then there's also going to be a soapstone sheet, which I'll have you kind of start to fill out some ideas on your own, and then we'll kind of come together so that we can start to identify that overall purpose, that overall argument I think Salinger's trying to incorporate. Because when you do get into your TWA for the book, that's one of those things that you're going to have to identify. What is it that he's trying to accomplish? What's the overall significance? And that's usually the hardest thing to identify and explain.
When's that TWA again?
That one's not going to be until the 16th. So your next TWA is probably going to get tomorrow, completely separate from the book.
Oh, okay.
Before you do the one for the book on the 16th, we'll spend a couple days looking at the book, digesting it, so that you'll kind of have some ideas for it.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day, Mr.
You too.